Amber Weston had always prided herself on making logical decisions. Her life was a series of calculated moves, each one aimed at securing a future that was both stable and predictable. Growing up in a small town, she learned early on that you couldn't leave things to chance. No, the only way to succeed was to control everything. And so, she did. But life, as it often does, had a funny way of throwing curveballs. Amber had just received a phone call that would change everything. It was from her father, whom she hadn't spoken to in years. "Amber, I need you to come back home. We need to talk." His voice had been thick with emotion, something she hadn't heard from him in a long time. She could feel the weight of his words pressing against her chest, and her mind instantly began to race. Why now? Why after all these years of silence? Amber wasn't sure if she wanted to know the answer, but there was no way around it. Her father's request was impossible to ignore, even for her. She had two choices: go back to the small town that had once felt like a prison, or stay in the city where she had built a life for herself. Staying meant stability and the continuation of her carefully planned future. Going meant revisiting painful memories, confronting the father who had abandoned her mother, and reopening old wounds. Amber's mind flickered to the last time she had seen her father, a man who had never been emotionally present, too consumed with his business dealings to give her the attention she needed. She remembered how he had promised to change, but in the end, nothing had changed. She'd learned to rely on herself. Her heart told her one thing: maybe there was a chance for reconciliation. Maybe this was the moment she had waited for all these years. Her brain, however, was shouting another message. This was a trap, a risk that could undo everything she had worked for. Amber paused in her apartment, the city skyline sprawling out before her. She stared at the phone in her hand, her fingers frozen on the screen. She could feel the pressure mounting, an old wound beginning to open. Was it worth it to risk everything for a chance at something that might be even more painful than before? The choice seemed simple, yet it felt like her whole future hung in the balance. Amber had always been good at reading people, good at staying ahead of the curve, but this was something she couldn't predict. Amber Weston sat in the quiet of her apartment, the only sound coming from the occasional honking of cars on the streets below. The lights of the city twinkled against the dark sky, but Amber's mind was miles away. The weight of her thoughts pressed down on her chest, leaving her feeling like she couldn't breathe. It had all started innocently enough. A few stolen glances, a fleeting touch. At first, Amber had chalked it up to nothing. It was just a passing attraction, a momentary lapse in judgment, but now she couldn't ignore it anymore. The line between what was acceptable and what wasn't had blurred. Her best friend, Chloe, had been with Ethan for over 2 years. They had always seemed like the perfect couple. Chloe was stunning, effortlessly cool, the type of woman who made friends wherever she went. Ethan was charming, tall, and funny, with an easy confidence that made him the kind of guy every girl wanted. Amber had always been the third wheel in their relationship, close to both of them, but never really in the spotlight. But that all changed the night Amber and Ethan had gone out for drinks after work. They'd been chatting casually, as friends do, when suddenly, their conversation took a turn. It started with a compliment, then a subtle touch on the arm. Amber could feel the chemistry building, like an electric current running through the air between them. And before she knew it, they were standing on the sidewalk just outside the bar, and Ethan kissed her. It was brief, but it left her breathless. She didn't know what to do or what to think. At first, Amber had brushed it off. She told herself that it was just a moment of weakness on Ethan's part. But as the days went by, she found herself thinking about him more and more. His eyes, the way he smiled when they made eye contact, the way his touch made her feel. It was as though he had awakened something inside her that she never even knew existed. The text messages had started soon after. Casual at first, but with an underlying tension that Amber couldn't ignore. "Hey, you up? was the latest one. It felt like an invitation, like a challenge she wasn't sure she was ready for. Amber picked up her phone, staring at the screen for a long moment. The soft glow of the device illuminated her face, her features drawn in concentration. She could feel the pull in her chest, the magnetic force between her and Ethan. But then she thought of Chloe, her best friend. Chloe had always been there for her, through thick and thin. And now Amber was standing at the edge of something that could destroy that friendship. Chloe had always complained about Ethan, saying he wasn't as attentive as he used to be. She'd mentioned that he had become distant, that the spark in their relationship had fizzled out. Amber had listened, offering support, advice, trying to be the good friend. But secretly, she had started to notice things. Little things. Ethan's wandering eyes when he was with her, the lingering touches, the way he'd smile a little too long when they were alone. It wasn't just friendly banter. There was something deeper beneath the surface. Amber put her phone down, her hands trembling slightly as she ran them through her hair. Was this how it was supposed to happen? Was she really considering crossing that line? She had always been the one to tell herself that she would never do something like this. But now, here she was, standing on the precipice, questioning everything. Her phone buzzed again. Ethan had sent another message. "What are you doing tonight?" It was a simple question, but the meaning behind it was clear. He wanted to see her. He wanted more than just a friendship. Amber's heart raced as she picked the phone back up, her fingers hovering over the screen. She knew what this could lead to. She knew it would be messy, complicated. She'd never been the type of person to make mistakes like this. But something in her, the part of her that was tired of being the good girl, tired of being the third wheel, wanted to say yes. She wanted to experience what it felt like to be desired, to be wanted by someone as charming as Ethan. But then, a wave of guilt hit her. Chloe had trusted her. She had confided in her about Ethan's flaws, about the cracks in their relationship. Amber had always been the one who reassured her, told her that everything would be okay. And now she was thinking about betraying that trust, about taking something that wasn't hers. How could she live with that? Her fingers trembled as she typed a response, her mind racing. She stared at the screen, typing out a message only to delete it moments later. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to do. Finally, she set the phone down, the weight of her indecision crashing over her. She needed to figure this out, needed to decide what kind of person she wanted to be. Did she want to be the kind of woman who took what she wanted, no matter the cost? Or did she want to be the woman who stayed loyal to her friend, even when her own desires were pulling her in a different direction? As she sat there in the quiet apartment, Amber realized that she was standing at the crossroads of her life. Whatever decision she made next would shape the rest of her future. And there was no going back. The tension in the air was palpable as Amber walked into the coffee shop. The usual comforting aroma of roasted beans felt suffocating today, like it was mocking her confusion. She had never felt so conflicted in her life. Each step she took toward the counter felt like it was leading her closer to a decision she wasn't sure she was ready to make. Her phone had buzzed in her pocket again while she was on her way. Ethan's name flashed across the screen, the message bold and simple. "I can't stop thinking about you." It sent a shiver down her spine, a mixture of excitement and dread swirling in her chest. The words were innocent enough, but they meant something far more complicated. Something she wasn't sure she could handle. Amber pushed through the door of the cafe, the bell above it chiming softly as she stepped inside. She scanned the room, looking for Chloe. Chloe was sitting by the window, sipping on her usual vanilla latte and scanning through her phone. Chloe's presence brought Amber a sense of comfort, but today, everything felt off. It was as if Chloe could sense the heaviness in the air too, the unspoken tension that hovered between them, waiting to break free. Amber walked over, trying to force a smile, but Chloe, ever perceptive, immediately put her phone down and tilted her head. "Hey, you okay?" Chloe asked, her voice soft but laced with concern. Amber froze for a second. She wanted to tell her everything, to unload the weight that had been on her shoulders ever since the night with Ethan. But the words got stuck in her throat, tangled with guilt and fear. How could she explain to her best friend that she had developed feelings for her boyfriend? Feelings that she didn't know how to control. "I'm fine. Just tired, I guess," Amber said, sitting down across from Chloe. She forced herself to meet Chloe's eyes, trying to seem normal, but it felt like the lie was written all over her face. Chloe gave her a knowing look. "You're not fine, Amber. What's going on? You've been off lately." Amber shifted uncomfortably in her seat, feeling the weight of Chloe's gaze on her. Chloe had always been able to read her like a book, and it was becoming impossible to keep up the facade. "I don't know. I guess I'm just confused," Amber admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Chloe raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued but also concerned. Confused about what? Amber hesitated. She wanted to say everything, wanted to spill the truth and admit to the temptation, the pull she felt toward Ethan. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not when the consequences were so high. If Chloe knew, it would ruin everything. Their friendship, the trust between them, and maybe even Chloe and Ethan's relationship. "I don't know. Life, I guess," Amber mumbled, avoiding Chloe's gaze. She could feel the lie eating her up from the inside, but she had no choice. She couldn't risk losing her friend over something as stupid as a fleeting desire. Chloe leaned forward, concern deepening in her eyes. "Amber, if something's going on, you know you can tell me. We've been through everything together, and you know I've got your back." Amber swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure. She couldn't let Chloe see how badly she was falling apart inside. Instead, she forced a smile, masking the turmoil with a thin layer of deflection. "Yeah, I know. I just need some time to figure things out," Amber said, her voice more confident than she felt. Chloe nodded, but Amber could see the skepticism in her eyes. Chloe knew her better than anyone, and it wouldn't take much for her to figure out that Amber was hiding something. As the conversation drifted to other topics, Amber's mind wandered back to Ethan. The pull was undeniable, like a magnetic force that seemed to grow stronger with every passing second. The more she tried to ignore it, the more persistent it became. And now, the message from Ethan was still lingering in her mind, replaying in an endless loop. "I can't stop thinking about you." Amber's fingers curled around her coffee cup, the warmth offering a brief distraction from the storm inside her head. The guilt, the fear, and the desire all tangled together, making it nearly impossible for her to focus on anything else. "What's going on with you and Ethan, by the way?" Chloe asked casually, but Amber could hear the subtle edge in her voice. She was fishing for something, and Amber had no idea how to respond. It was like a game of chess now. Amber was trapped, each move carrying the weight of a potential disaster. But could she keep playing the game, or was it time to fold? "I don't know," Amber said, her voice low. "Things feel different. He's been kind of distant lately, hasn't he?" Chloe sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Yeah, it's been weird. I can tell he's not as into things as he used to be. But it's not like he's doing anything wrong, you know? Maybe I'm just overthinking it." Amber's stomach tightened. She wanted to tell her friend that it wasn't just that. There was more, so much more. But she couldn't. Not yet. And so they sat there, the silence between them filled with unspoken words, and Amber couldn't help but wonder how much longer she could keep pretending that everything was okay. The phone buzzed again. "Are you still coming over tonight?" "Ethan." Amber's heart raced in her chest. This time, there was no ambiguity in his message. This wasn't just friendly banter anymore. He was making it clear that he wanted more. But what did she want? And how much longer could she keep pretending that she didn't already know the answer? The day had passed in a blur of meaningless chatter, work, and endless distractions that Amber didn't care about. Each time her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan, she'd freeze, her heart racing. Every message felt like a test. A test she wasn't sure she could pass without destroying everything. By the time she got home, the familiar weight of her apartment felt even heavier. The silence pressed in on her, and she didn't know whether it was the stillness of the room or the chaos inside her that made it so suffocating. Her phone buzzed again. "I'm still waiting for you." Ethan Amber stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the reply button. She could feel the tension in her fingertips, as though they were reaching out for something she wasn't sure she was ready for. Ethan was practically begging for her presence, and it was hard to ignore the way her body responded to that. Every inch of her wanted to say yes, wanted to go to him, to feel the heat of his touch, the pull between them. But what about Chloe? What about the friendship they had? She dropped her phone on the couch and paced back and forth, trying to clear her head. What was she doing? She was betraying her best friend, her own conscience. The guilt was gnawing at her, and the shame was almost too much to bear. Her thoughts swirled around the one question that had been on her mind ever since Ethan's confession. How did it come to this? Her mind replayed the night they had spent together in vivid detail. The way Ethan's lips had tasted against hers, how he'd held her so close, and how she had been drawn to him despite every warning bell ringing in her head. What had happened to the boundaries they used to have? To the friendship she and Chloe shared? Amber couldn't make sense of it, and she hated herself for even considering what she was about to do. But she couldn't stop thinking about it. She couldn't stop thinking about him. Amber let out a long breath, collapsing onto the couch. Her phone was still lying there, the screen lighting up again. This time a call came through. Ethan. Her breath hitched. For a moment, she considered letting it go to voicemail. But she didn't. She couldn't. "Hey," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She didn't know why, but hearing his voice again made her feel weak, vulnerable. "Amber," Ethan's voice came through, low and tinged with something that made her heart race. "Are you coming over?" There it was again. The question that seemed so simple, but felt like a sentence. A decision she could no longer avoid. "I don't know, Ethan," she whispered, closing her eyes. I'm not sure anymore." The line went silent for a few moments. Amber could hear his breathing on the other end, and she wondered if he felt the same tension, the same pressure that she did. But before she could continue, he spoke again. "I know this isn't easy, Amber. I'm not asking you to throw everything away. But you've got to stop running from this." His words struck her like a punch in the gut. Stop running. How could she stop running when she was so terrified of what might happen if she stopped? If she let herself be swept up in this? What if she lost everything? "You're not the only one who's scared," she said, her voice shaking. This isn't just about you and me. This is about Chloe. I can't hurt her like that. I can't." "But you're already hurting, Amber," he interrupted softly. "You're lying to her, lying to yourself, and it's eating you alive." Amber bit her lip, trying to hold back the tears. He wasn't wrong. The lies, the secrets, they were suffocating her. She had been pretending for so long that everything was okay when it wasn't, and now she didn't know how to fix it. "I know," she said, her voice barely audible. "But I don't know what to do." There was a long pause on the other end. Ethan's voice softened, the tenderness in his words causing a pang in her chest. "You don't have to do anything, Amber. You just have to be honest with yourself." Amber pulled the phone away from her ear, staring at it for a moment. The weight of his words sank deep into her, settling like a stone in her stomach. She had spent so much time running from the truth, from what she really wanted, that she had forgotten how to listen to her own heart. Ethan wasn't wrong, but how could she face Chloe with the truth when it meant shattering everything? "I don't know if I can do this," Amber whispered, the guilt swallowing her whole. "You don't have to do it alone," Ethan replied. "I'm here, Amber, and I always will be." Amber closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on her. Her heart was torn in two. One part of her desperately wanted to give in, to walk away from the guilt and the shame, to let herself fall into this forbidden passion. But the other part of her knew better. She had seen what secrets could do to people, what betrayal could do to a friendship. And yet here she was, standing on the precipice of it all, knowing that there was no going back. She could no longer ignore the truth, and she could no longer pretend like everything was okay. She took a deep breath and made a choice. "I'll be there," she said, the words escaping her lips before she could stop them. She didn't even know if it was the right choice, but it was the one she had made. Amber's footsteps echoed through the quiet hallway as she approached Ethan's apartment. The decision had been made, and there was no turning back now. Her pulse pounded in her ears, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she reached for the doorbell. She hesitated for just a moment, her mind racing with what she was about to do. The door swung open almost immediately, and Ethan stood there, his expression unreadable. He looked as if he had been waiting for her, which, in all honesty, he probably had been. He stepped aside, gesturing for her to come in, but Amber didn't move right away. For the first time, she truly looked at him, taking in the intensity of his gaze. His eyes were dark with desire, but there was something else there, something that made her stomach twist. She had wanted this, hadn't she? She had been drawn to him from the very beginning. So why was she suddenly unsure? Ethan took a step forward, his hand gently touching her arm, bringing her back to the present. His touch sent a jolt through her, igniting that familiar spark. "Amber, are you okay?" His voice was soft, his concern evident, and it made her feel guilty. She nodded, even though she wasn't sure if she believed it herself. "Yeah," she whispered. "Just a lot on my mind." Ethan didn't say anything, simply closing the door behind her and guiding her to the couch. He didn't ask for an explanation, didn't push. He just let her sit, and for a brief moment Amber allowed herself to breathe. The silence between them was palpable. It wasn't the awkward kind, though. It was charged, thick with anticipation. They had crossed a line, and neither of them knew exactly where to go from here. Amber finally turned to him, her heart pounding in her chest. She wanted to say something, to explain herself, but the words wouldn't come. She didn't know how to explain the chaos swirling in her mind, the guilt, the desire, the confusion. Ethan seemed to sense it. He reached for her hand, gently lifting it to his lips. "You don't have to explain yourself to me," he said quietly. "I know what you're going through." Amber's breath hitched as his lips brushed against her skin, and a part of her wanted to pull away, to run back to her safe, controlled life. But another part of her, the part that had been quieted for so long, wanted to stay. She wanted to lose herself in him, in this moment, and forget everything else. But she couldn't. She pulled her hand back, standing up quickly, her chest tight with the pressure of her decision. "I can't do this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I can't just forget who I am, who Chloe is." Ethan's expression faltered, and Amber could see the disappointment flicker in his eyes. But then he took a deep breath and stepped toward her, gently cupping her face in his hands. "Amber," he said, his voice steady, "you don't have to forget anything, but you can't keep denying what you feel. You've been fighting this for so long." She shook her head, the tears threatening to spill. "I don't know if I can live with myself if I do this. If I hurt Chloe, I'll never forgive myself." Ethan's thumb traced along her cheek as he looked at her with such intensity that Amber almost felt like he was seeing straight through her. "I'm not asking you to hurt anyone, but you have to decide, Amber. You have to decide what you want, what makes you happy. Because I don't think you're happy in your current life, and I don't think you'll ever be." His words hit her like a ton of bricks, and for a moment, she just stood there, processing everything he had said. He was right, she hadn't been happy. She had been pretending, wearing a mask, trying to be everything for everyone else. But what about her? What did she want? Amber let out a shaky breath, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. The pull she felt toward Ethan, the guilt, the fear, it was all too much. She looked down at the floor, trying to collect herself. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for this," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's hands dropped to his sides, and he took a step back, giving her space. "I'm not going to force you into anything, Amber. You don't have to make any decisions right now. But I want you to think about it. Really think about what you want." Amber's heart twisted in her chest. What did she want? For so long, she had been hiding behind her responsibilities, her role as the good friend, the supportive person. But what about her own happiness? Was it time to put herself first for once? Before she could say anything, the sound of a car door slamming outside made her freeze. Her breath caught in her throat. She recognized the sound. Chloe. Amber's mind went into overdrive. What if Chloe walked in right now? What would she say? What would Amber even say? I have to go," Amber said, backing toward the door. She didn't know why she was running. Maybe it was the fear of facing Chloe. Maybe it was the overwhelming pressure of the situation. Ethan didn't stop her, but his expression was hard to read. He didn't argue, just nodded. "Take your time. I'll be here when you're ready." Amber left without another word, rushing out the door and into the night. She needed space to think, to breathe, to make sense of everything that had happened. But as she walked, her heart weighed heavily in her chest, the unanswered questions hanging over her. She had come so close to making a choice. But now, she wasn't sure if she was ready for what came next. Amber's footsteps echoed as she walked down the familiar streets. The tension from earlier, still thick in the air. She had fled from Ethan's apartment, but the storm inside her mind had only grown stronger. She could feel the weight of her choices pressing down on her chest. What was she doing? Was she really going to betray Chloe? As she reached her apartment building, she paused for a moment, taking in the quiet. It almost felt surreal, like the calm before a storm. With a deep breath, she walked through the doors, her mind still a whirlwind. She barely noticed Chloe sitting on the couch, scrolling through her phone, until Chloe spoke. "Amber, where have you been? I tried calling you." Amber froze, caught off guard by the question. The weight of the guilt surged within her, but she couldn't let Chloe see it. "Not yet. I was out for a walk. Needed to clear my head," Amber said, forcing a smile. She tried to act normal, but everything felt different now. Every word felt like a lie. Chloe put her phone down and smiled. "I'm glad you're okay. I just wanted to make sure." Amber nodded, her heart aching. This wasn't fair to Chloe. She was a good friend, and Amber didn't know how much longer she could keep lying. "Yeah, I'm fine," Amber said, but the words felt hollow. The truth was, she was far from fine. She sat down beside Chloe, the two of them sharing a brief moment of quiet companionship, but Amber's mind was elsewhere. She couldn't shake the image of Ethan's face, the desire in his eyes. But most of all, she couldn't stop wondering if there was a way out of this, if she could find a way to make things right without causing more pain. But in the end, Amber knew one thing for sure. She couldn't keep living for everyone else. She needed to find herself. The question was, at what cost? The room felt suffocating, the weight of the secret she was carrying too heavy to bear. Amber glanced at Chloe, feeling the pull between guilt and desire. There was no simple answer. As Chloe began to talk about her day, Amber sat in silence, a single thought ringing in her mind. Would she ever be able to make things right? She didn't have the answer. But one thing was certain, the road ahead would not be easy, and it was only just beginning. With Amber now at a crossroads, the truth remains buried for now. But how long can she continue to hide her feelings from Chloe? What will the future hold for her and Ethan? Stay tuned for the next chapter of Amber's journey, where decisions and consequences will collide. And that's where the story ends, for now. If you've enjoyed Amber's journey, feel free to follow along for more.